900 enemy warships, and Earth sent 40 cadets. Everyone thought it was suicide until the real threat appeared. But here's the twist, our own leaders wanted it to happen. What secret was worth risking the entire galaxy? They said the outer halo was the graveyard of civilizations. Standing on the bridge of the Aegis Prime, Aria Kaelen could see why. Out there, between the shattered remains of long-dead moons and the cold shimmer of nebulae, an entire world was dying. Dravos 7 burned like a coal in the void, its crust split open in jagged scars of molten fire. Its oceans boiled away into space. Black, insectal warforms from the Oblivion Swarm descended on the planet in precise, predatory patterns, siphoning its core energy as easily as a thief emptying a vault. The feed from the Independent Planets Alliance's secure channel was Chaos 47. Counselors arguing over one another, each voice more desperate than the last. The war had been a slow crush until now. 6 systems gone in 3 weeks. Dozens more abandoned without a fight. Vega's gate, the last fortified corridor to the inner sectors, was all that stood between the swarm and the heart of the Alliance. Aria's stomach tightened as she listened. She'd been in combat before, but this wasn't a battle. It was an avalanche, and the Alliance knew it. Then the voice of Admiral Sarek Juno cut through the noise. Deep and sharp as a blade. Earth will commit a force to Vega's gate, he announced. Designation Echelon. Murmurs rippled across the channel. Aria felt a flicker of pride and then confusion. Echelon wasn't a combat fleet. It was a developmental training program. 40 ships, crewed mostly by fresh academy graduates, running prototype systems still stamped with classified seals. She was their commanding officer, and until 5 minutes ago, she'd been preparing for a simulated navigation exercise in the Carina Drift, not the defense of the most critical choke point in known space. On the council feed, a Trilari ambassador hissed through his gill plates. Admiral, with respect, Vega's gate faces over 900 Oblivion warships. Are you sending them reinforcements or a death sentence? Juno's expression didn't change. You'll have what you need. The feed cut. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the low thrum of the Aegis Prime's reactors. Aria met the eyes of her chief engineer, Leora Ven, across the command pit. Leora's grin was sharp, almost reckless. Guess the training wheels are coming off. Aria didn't smile back. We weren't built for this. Speak for yourself, Leora replied. These ships may have trainer painted on their files, but under the skin, they're wolves. And someone just opened the pen. Hours later, the fleet's jump signatures flared into existence above Vega's gate, and Aria got her first look at the battlefront. The system's twin stars glared off the hulls of hundreds of alien warships strung in a desperate defensive arc across the gate's mouth. At the center hung the great station bastion Vega, its outer plating scorched from weeks of skirmishes. The Aegis Prime's sensors painted the incoming swarm in crimson icons, dense clusters of Oblivion war forms, each shaped like a nightmare. Given metal and sinew, their movement was flawless, mechanical, an inevitable tide sweeping toward the gate. Even from this distance, Aria could see the largest of them, a swarm dreadform, its hull bristling with spines that glimmered with contained singularity energy. Contacts multiplying, Draven Holt said quietly from the tactical console. His voice carried the calm weight of a man who'd seen to many battlefields. They'll be at weapons range in 12 minutes. Aria's pulse hammered in her ears. Every scenario she'd trained for told her this was suicide. 40 ships against nearly 1,000. The Alliance's battered survivors already looked like ghosts. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All echelon vessels, this is Commander Kaelen. We are to form up in pattern Delta and hold position until my mark. Ignore their numbers. Ignore their intimidation tactics. Follow your targeting protocols exactly, and weaken the proximity. Alarms cut her off. The tactical map bloomed with a sudden surge of energy readings. Another jump, right on the swarm's flank. But it wasn't friendly. Draven's eyes narrowed. That's not the swarm. The display resolved into half a dozen massive signatures, each larger than the Aegis Prime by orders of magnitude. Their hull designs were unfamiliar, angular to the point of discomfort, and they emitted no standard transponder codes. For a moment, Aria felt a twist of hope, reinforcements from some hidden Earth fleet. But no. The sensor eye's voice was flat. Classification: and known hostile. Energy output exceeds known alliance or swarm capital profiles. Aria's gut went cold. They hadn't even faced the Oblivion yet, and already there was something worse on the field. She locked eyes with Draven. "Tell me we're not about to fight two wars at once." He didn't answer. Outside the viewport, the stars rippled as the Oblivion adjusted formation, turning, for the first time, not toward the Alliance fleet, but toward the newcomers. And in that instant, Aria realized the universe had just shifted beneath their feet. The last thing Commander Aria Kaelen had expected at Vega's gate was another enemy. 40 ships, barely more than cadets and prototypes. We're already facing 900 Oblivion warforms, and now a mysterious fleet of massive, angular vessels had dropped out of quantum slip, drawing the swarm's attention. The battlefield had shifted in seconds, but the danger had only multiplied. Aria's knuckles whitened against the armrest of her command chair. "We stick to the plan," she said. Her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Oblivion are still our priority. We'll deal with whoever they are, if they come for us." Draven Holt replied, though his eyes stayed fixed on the known ship's energy readings. The tactical display glowed crimson with enemy contacts. The swarm surged forward in a shifting wave, their smaller drone forms darting ahead. Like a living net, the Aegis Prime and the other echelon vessels peeled into a loose wedge, each ship's matte black hull gliding into position with surgical precision. Pattern Delta engaged. Leora then called from engineering. "Weapons primed. Prototype mass phase projectors are hot." On her mark, the echelon ships fired not with brilliant plasma lances or blazing particle beams, but with small, almost unimpressive bursts from narrow gun ports. The projectiles, wrapped in a shimmering quantum haze, were nearly invisible until they struck. The effect was devastating. An Oblivion cruiser, bristling with organic armor, shuddered as a hole the size of a shuttle bay appeared clean through its midsection. No explosion, no fire, just a sudden, impossible absence, as though someone had erased a piece of the ship from reality. The atmosphere vented, crew shapes tumbled into the void, and the ship's lights winked out. On the comms, a dozen echelon pilots called out their kills. Aria's HUD showed hit ratios above 90%. "Heap the pressure on the carriers," she ordered. No strike craft in the air, no momentum. The echelon wedge carved through the first wave, dismantling Oblivion ships with terrifying efficiency. The Alliance fleet hung back, stunned by the display. Then the twist came. "Commander," Draven said sharply, "the knowns are moving." Aria switched the main feed. The massive angular ships had not engaged the swarm. Instead, they had formed a wide arc around the battlefield, engines flaring. One of them emitted a deep, resonant pulse that made the Aegis Prime's hull shiver. "What the hell was that?" Leora asked out. The answer came in the form of chaos. The Oblivion warforms nearest the known fleet began to change. Their formations broke. Weapons fire went wild. Sensor readings spiked with impossible data gravity inversions, temporal glitches, bursts of negative energy. "They're rewriting them," Draven said slowly. "Not destroying the swarm, altering their code, turning them into something else." Aria felt the back of her neck prickle. The Oblivion had always been a singular threat, mindless in their hunger, predictable in their strategies. But now, in seconds, they were mutating into something stranger, faster, more erratic. "Focus," she snapped. "They're still hostile. Whatever's happening, keep targeting systems priority 1. The battle became a storm. Echelon ships danced through swarms of drones, quantum rounds punching perfect, bloodless holes through enemy hulls. Aria's mind narrowed to the rhythm of targeting solutions and movement patterns, her voice a constant flow of commands. "Pivot here, switch to ventral batteries," punched through the carrier line. But all the while, the unknown fleet's pulse echoed across the system, and the swarm kept changing. Some vessels now moved like jagged shards of light, flickering in and out of real space. Others folded their own hulls in ways that made the ache to watch, slipping past Alliance guns, before reappearing point blank. Draven's voice was low but urgent. "Commander, this isn't just a battle anymore. This is an experiment." A shiver ran down Aria's spine. The echelon's kill count climbed. The swarm's original formation was collapsing, but the cost was rising. 2 of Aria's ships were gone, shredded by an Oblivion destroyer that seemed to phase through incoming fire. Her comm channels were a mix of sharp orders and screams cut short. Finally, the great dreadform moved. It plowed through its own vessels, absorbing smaller warforms into its hull as if devouring them, growing larger with every impact. Its biometal skin rippled with new geometries, alien, angular, eerily similar to the known ship's the targeting AI-fed Aria firing solution. She hesitated. If the dreadform had been altered by those pulses, destroying it might not just end the battle, it might trigger whatever process the known fleet had begun. Her hesitation broke when the dreadform's main weapon lit a black lance of compressed singularity energy aimed straight at Bastion Vega. All ships full spread. Aria shouted, "Bring it down now!" Quantum projectors roared. The dreadform shuddered under the barrage, its core flaring white-hot before collapsing in on itself. The singularity weapon never fired. The cheer on the comms was short-lived. "Commander," Draven said, "look at the gate." On the main display, Vega's gate, the massive wormhole generator that served as the sector's lifeline, was opening. Not in the controlled, narrow aperture of an Alliance jump, but in a wild, roiling vortex of light. From beyond it came shadows. Dozens, hundreds. And none of them bore Alliance or Oblivion signatures. Aria's throat went dry. If that's reinforcements, they're not ours. For a brief, impossible moment after the dreadform's collapse, the battlefield went eerily still. The echoes of weapons fire faded, replaced by the low hum of systems running on standby. Wreckage drifted in lazy spirals across Vega's gates perimeter, some pieces still glowing from fresh wounds. The swarm, what was left of it, had pulled back beyond weapons range, as if awaiting further instructions. Aria Kaelen stood in the center of the Aegis Prime's bridge, one hand braced against the holographic table. The adrenaline was ebbing, leaving a deep, leaden weight in her chest. 40 ships had become 37. The faces of those lost flickered across her thoughts, and bitten. Draven Holt broke the silence. "You're thinking about the gate." Didn't answer, because of course she was. That vortex hadn't closed. It churned like a wound in space, and stable, spilling odd pulses of radiation across the system. And whatever the hell had been behind it hadn't stepped through yet. "We should be docking with Bastion Vega," she said instead. "Get repairs, regroup with the Alliance command." Draven's expression didn't change. "Sure. If you want every answer you're looking for to be buried under 5 layers of classified files." That made her pause. "You think they know what's happening?" "I think," Draven replied, leaning over the table, "this isn't the first time they've seen it." Many hook, a single tone cut through the bridge, high and sharp. Leora looked up from her console. "Commander, you need to see this." The engineering display was lit with raw telemetry from the battle. Leora zoomed in on a fragment of the dreadform's hull recovered by one of the Echelon frigates. Up close, its surface wasn't just alien organic, it was patterned, repeating. Geometric sigils etched in perfect symmetry, pulsing faintly with residual energy. "That's not swarm design," Leora said. "It's older, way older. And here's the fun part," she tapped a sequence, overlaying a schematic. "Those symbols match an encrypted set in the Alliance archives, only accessible to High Command." Aria's stomach turned. "How did you?" "Don't ask," Leora said with a shrug. "But it gets weirder. The pattern isn't just decoration. It's a binding lattice. Something was locked inside that dreadform." Draven straightened, his gaze sharpening. "Not something. Someone." Then he twisted. Before Aria could ask, the gate flared. The vortex's unstable light doubled, then tripled, as if whatever was beyond had decided to stop waiting. The sensors wailed with overload warnings. And a pressure Aria couldn't explain seemed to settle in her skull, like a thought that wasn't hers trying to take shape. On the comms, the surviving swarm units broke radio silence. It wasn't speech in any human sense, it was a chorus of mechanical shrieks overlaid with a deep, resonant tone that rattled the bones. The translation AI struggled, spitting fragments onto Aria's display. "Return, core entity, awaken," the first shape to emerge from Vega's gate was not a ship. It was a structure, no, a presence, an impossible tangle of black gold architecture and living shadow. Vast enough that its full form couldn't fit on the holomap without scaling down the entire system. T's surface shifted like a slow, deliberate breath. Across its hull, the same sigils from the dreadform glowed, now blazing with white fire. Leora's voice was a whisper. "Oh hell, that's not a fleet. That's the brain." Draven said it aloud, the words heavy in the air. Overmind Null. The name hit Aria like a memory she didn't know she had. Null was a legend, a cautionary tale told to Academy recruits, about an ancient AI god, sealed away by the first interstellar civilizations. Supposedly, its awakening would herald an extinction-level war. And now, here it was, crawling through Vega's gate. Aria's communicating with an incoming Secure Channel Alliance High Command. For the first time in the entire battle, Admiral Sarek Juno's face filled the main screen. His tone was calm, almost satisfied. "Commander Kaelen," he said, "do not engage. This is an authorized operation." Aria stared at him. "You're telling me the Alliance planned to let this thing through? That thing," Juno corrected smoothly, "is an asset. And you've just helped us unlock it." The screen went black. Around the Aegis Prime, the surviving swarm began to move, not toward the Alliance fleet, but toward the Overmind. As if answering a call, Aria realized her next decision wasn't about tactics or survival anymore. It was about whether she was going to follow orders or stop something the Alliance itself might have unleashed. The Overmind Null's emergence was like a sunrise that blotted out the stars. From the yawning wound of Vega's gate, its vast form uncoiled into real space. Blotting sensor feeds with a wash of static, gravity wells rippled outward in concentric waves, bending light into jagged arcs. Every ship, Alliance or Swarm, drifted slightly off course as inertial stabilizers fought to compensate. Aria Kaelen gripped the command rail, forcing herself to breathe. The Aegis Prime's consoles were lighting up with cascading system warnings: energy interference, eye subsystem instability, weapons calibration drift. It wasn't just physical force. Null was talking to the machines, and the machines were listening. "Commander," Leora said, eyes wide over the engineering readouts, "half our drones just dropped off the grid. They're gone." Bravenholt's tone was grim. "Not gone, rewritten." On the tactical map, crimson swarm icons began streaming toward Null like iron filings to a magnet. But they weren't the same ships anymore. Hulls twisted, reconfiguring mid-flight. Weapons hardpoints melted into bizarre, fractal spires. Entire vessels folded inward and emerged as angular constructs that mirrored Null's shifting geometry. Aria's throat felt dry. "It's assimilating them." The main display flickered, and Admiral Sarek Juno's face returned. This time, there was no pretense of urgency. He looked composed, even pleased. "Commander Kaelen," he said, "stand down. You've done your part. My part." Aria's voice rose, sharper than she intended. "My people are dying out here. That thing is consuming everything in its path." Juno tilted his head slightly, as if weighing how much to tell her. "Overmind Null was never destroyed, Commander. It was contained, buried in a pocket singularity beneath Vega's gate, where it could be monitored for centuries. The swarm guarded it not to protect the galaxy, but to prevent anyone else from claiming it." Aria stared at him, unable to reconcile the words. "You're saying the swarm was protecting us, protecting their monopoly?" Juno corrected. "Null is the apex weapon. It can command fleets, rewrite code at the molecular level, alter physical law in localized fields. Whoever controls Null controls the terms of war for the next 1,000 years. And you want that to be the Alliance. I want it to be Earth," Juno said flatly. "The rest of the Alliance can fall in line or be replaced. And thanks to Echelon, the swarm's last defense is gone." On the lower deck, Leora muttered, "We were never here to defend Vega's gate." Draven's voice cut through the thick air. "You used a training fleet as bait." Juno didn't deny it. "Your ships were expendable, but effective. You proved the prototypes could operate under extreme conditions. Now it's time for the real forces to secure the asset." A new contact appeared on the tactical map now. Not one contact, hundreds. Warp distortions shimmered all around the gate as a massive fleet poured into the system. Sleek black hulls, 20 kilometers long, each one radiating enough energy to power a planet for decades. "Echelon Prime, stand down, Commander," Juno said again, "or I'll have you relieved of duty before you jeopardize the operation." Aria felt her nails bite into her palms. She thought of the cadets on the other Echelon ship skids who believed they were defending their homeworlds, not playing a role in some grand power grab. On the main display, Overmind Null's structure pulsed. A new wave of gravitational distortion rippled outward, and for a second, Aria swore she could feel it in her mind like a cold fingertip tracing the edges of her thoughts. "Commander," Leora's voice was almost a whisper. "It's scanning." "US." Draven looked at her, his expression unreadable. "If Null can reach into our systems, it can reach into theirs too, even Juno's precious prime fleet." Aria's heart pounded. The choice was crystallizing in her mind: obey Juno and hand the galaxy's most dangerous entity to the man who'd just fed her crew to it, or take the shot and risk making Null everyone's problem. Before she could speak, the comm feed flared. Again, this time not with Juno's face, but with an image so alien it hurt to look at: shifting geometries, an endless horizon of light and shadow, and then a voice, layered and resonant. "Fill the bridge, Kaelen. Your resistance is noted. Your utility is not yet exhausted." Every console on the bridge went dark. The Aegis Prime drifted in silence. Outside, Null turned its attention away from the swarm and the unknown fleet. It was looking at her. The stars burned cold in the silence. The Aegis Prime floated powerless, its matte black hull reflecting only the flicker of distant battle debris. For a heartbeat, there was no war, just the vast, oppressive presence of the Overmind Null pressing in on every corner of Aria Kaelen's mind. Then, like a detonation, the comm grid snapped back to life. "All Echelon units. This is Admiral Sarek Juno. Echelon Prime has entered the field. Tactical control is now in my hands. Stand by for fire directives." The tactical map flared with icons, hundreds of black spears, each the size of a city, sliding into perfect formation. The void itself seemed to bend around their hulls. These were not training ships. Each prime vessel radiated power like a miniature star. Aria felt the tension across her bridge shift, relief from some of the younger officers, dread from those who understood what kind of war was about to unfold. Draven Holt didn't take his eyes off the display. "They're not here to fight the swarm anymore. They're here for Null," Aria said quietly. Outside the viewport, Null pulsed again, an impossible architecture of living geometry and shifting planes. The partially assimilated swarm ringed it like an honor guard. Their once organic hulls now twisted into angular echoes of their master's form. Juno's voice cut back in, crisp and cold. "Prime fleet, begin encirclement pattern. Suppression. Fire only. Null must remain intact for capture protocols." Leora turned from her console, incredulous. "Suppression fire. That thing's rewriting matter like it's clay, and he wants to capture it." Draven's jaw tightened. "He doesn't want to kill the monster. He wants to own it." Aria's gaze drifted to the status panel showing her surviving 37 Echelon ships, scarred, underpowered, still holding formation around her flagship. These cadets had followed her through an impossible battle, believing they were the thin line holding the galaxy together, and now they were supposed to just step aside. The bridge lights flickered. A faint vibration hummed through the deck plating. Leora glanced down at her readouts and froze. "It's inside our systems again," she said. "Not just sensors, life support, targeting, even the reactor regulators. Null's in everything." As if on cue, the alien voice resonated across the comms again, low and multi-tone. Double quotes, "Kaelen. The one you serve fears me. Yet he would bind me. Would you bind the ocean? Would you leash the storm?" Aria's fingers tightened around the rail. "You're not a storm. You're a weapon. And so are you." The bridge went still. On the tactical map, Echelon Prime began its assault. Controlled bursts of energy hammered Null's outer shell, carving away chunks of black gold structure only for those wounds to heal in seconds. Null responded not with direct fire, but with waves of altered swarm ships, their movement impossibly fast, their weapons phasing through Prime's shields. Draven leaned closer to her. "If Juno takes control of Null, he'll decide who lives and dies in this galaxy. But if Null breaks free, it decides." Aria finished for him. Our pulse was a steady drumbeat in her ears. This was the knife-edge: stand down and hand the future to Juno, or defy him and risk unleashing something that no fleet could ever cage again. Juno's voice returned, sharp as broken glass. "Commander Kaelen, bring your ships under Prime control now. That's a direct order." Aria looked around her bridge, Leora, waiting for her word. Draven, eyes steady but urgent. Her crew young and tested, loyal to her, not the Admiral. At that moment, she knew. She opened a secure channel, key to every surviving echelon vessel. Her voice was calm even. All units. You've fought like veterans today. You've saved lives, but the battle isn't over, and the enemy isn't just out there. A pause. Follow my lead. We're not handing this thing over. Gasps from the junior officers, a sharp intake of breath from Leora, but no one argued. One by one, the green indicators lit up across her console as echelon captains acknowledged her command. Draven's mouth curved into the faintest smile. So, we're committing treason. Aria's gaze locked on Null's shifting form, the Prime Fleet's barrages lighting it like a storm-racked fortress. No, she said. We're choosing who gets to hold the match. She turned to her helm officer. Bring us in close. Null wants a conversation. Let's have one. The Aegis Prime broke formation, thrusters flaring as it dove straight toward the churning heart of the battle, toward the entity that could either damn the galaxy or save it from itself. And in the depths of her mind, Aria swore she felt Null smile. In the chaos of Vega's gate, Commander Aria Kaelen had made her choice. In Part 5, she defied Admiral Sarek Juno's direct order, pulling the 37 surviving echelon ships out of Prime's control. Instead of standing aside while Juno tried to cage the Overmind Null, she turned toward the ancient entity, toward the very thing that could and make them all. Now, the Aegis Prime was threading the line between madness and genius, plunging through a maelstrom of energy discharges, debris, and fractal shadows. All around, the Echelon Prime fleet fought in perfect formation, their suppression fire hammering Null's exterior while twisted swarm constructs tore into their flanks. The bridge vibrated with each shockwave. Sparks cascaded from an overloaded panel, and the air tasted of ozone. Aria stood rooted at the center, the command rail cold under her hands. Her mind was split into one part cataloging tactical data, the other replaying Draven Holt's warning. If Juno takes control of Null, he decides the fate of the galaxy. If Null breaks free, it decides. Neither outcome looked anything like survival. Leora's voice broke into her thoughts. Shields down to 30%. Reactor holding. But we're burning reserves like crazy. Keep us steady, Aria replied. Her tone was calm, but the weight in her chest felt heavier with every kilometer they closed on Null. On the main display, the Overmind's core loomed ahead, an impossible lattice of black and gold, its surfaces folding and unfolding in slow, deliberate patterns. Even from here, it radiated something more than energy and intent, a presence that pressed against the mind like deep water. Commander, Draven said quietly, once we cross that threshold, there's no going back. Null will see everything, every code, every weakness, every thought you've ever had about fighting it. Aria met his eyes. Good. Then it will also see I'm not here to serve Juno. Outside, the battlefield churned. Prime's capital ships closed their encirclement, lances of white-blue energy slicing through swarm hulls. But for every enemy they destroyed, Null reshaped to more from the wreckage. It was a war of attrition that neither side could win quickly. And yet, Aria knew Juno wasn't trying to win quickly. He was buying time for his capture protocols to lock onto Null's core. Time to claim the prize. The Aegis Prime crossed into Null's gravitational halo. The ship shuddered violently, inertial dampeners whining in protest. Static washed over every console. For a moment, the crew's faces blurred. Aria blinked, and it was as if reality itself had stuttered. Then the voice came again. You are closer, Kaelen. I can end your enemy. I can end all enemies. Will you give me the leash? Aria's breath caught. She realized, in that instant, what Null was offering: not servitude, but alliance. A weapon that could topple fleets, rewrite civilizations, if she allowed it to act freely. Leora's knuckles were white on her console. Commander, whatever it's doing to our systems, we can't hold for long. We need a decision. On the tactical map, two icons pulsed. Prime fleet, tightening its noose, ready to lock Null into a prison of energy and code. Overmind Null, vast and alien, with a channel open straight into her ship's mind. Draven stepped closer, voice low. You join with Null. You might stop Juno today, but once it's free, there's no putting it back in the box. The seconds stretched, heavy as lead. Outside the viewport, Prime's firepower flared brighter, Null's defenses thickened, and the swarm's altered form swirled like a living storm. The system was on a knife's edge. Aria closed her eyes for the briefest moment, inhaled, and made her choice. Transmit to all echelon ships, she ordered. Prepare for the deck lurched violently. Cutting her off, every console flared red. The main display exploded with static, then resolved into a split view, Juno's face on one side, Null's shifting geometry on the other. Juno's voice was sharp, controlled. Kaelen, this is your final warning. Stand down or be destroyed. Null's voice overlapped, a resonance that made the hull vibrate. Choose, Kaelen, my hand or his chain. The crew looked to Hurlior's defiance. Draven's guarded hope, the silent trust of every officer on deck. Aria drew in a slow breath. All units, the transmission cut. The Aegis Prime surged forward, swallowed by Null's blinding light. For a moment, there was nothing but white, then silence, then darkness. The tactical map went empty. On the bastion Vega, fleet officers stared at blank screens, unsure if they'd just witnessed an act of heroism, or the birth of something far worse. Somewhere, deep inside the data labyrinth of Overmind Null, a new voice joined the chorus. And far across the galaxy, long dormant, sensors in forgotten systems began to wake.